Hello, hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Reese. I talk about books and reading and writing here. And welcome to my monthly wrap-up for the month of April, where I talk about everything I read this past month. As I always do, I'll be sharing a mini review of each book and also, my thoughts in general. But before I jump into that, I have a question. Do you know of any good audio books? I am not really an audiobook person, but for more context, I'm trying to walk more, and because of weather or, time, allergies, all those things, sometimes those walks have to be on a treadmill. And normally I'm a podcast listener, but I found that trying to trick myself into getting to listen to a podcast on only the treadmill isn't really working because I'm so used to listening to podcasts when I clean and do the dishes and all that stuff. So I'm thinking if I had an audiobook that was really good as an audiobook that I only listen to on the treadmill, that would be the thing to keep me motivated to walk. Anyways, it's like the dangling carrot at the end of a stick for me. That's the audiobook I'm looking for. Fiction, preferably, because I do listen to a lot of podcasts, so I feel like nonfiction might feel like that, literary, but also I don't know, just something compelling, really good. I guess I could Google this, but I feel like you all have given me really great book recommendations in the past, so I'm hoping that if you are into audiobooks, you also are yes, this is what you're looking for. So that's first. Let's start, as always, with my Storygraph stats for April. And not my best month in terms of reading. I watched a lot of TV, and so as a result of that, I only read 4 books, which is fine. I would like to read more in May. I know that when I read at night, I feel better and I sleep better versus when I'm just watching TV at night. And so I think for that reason alone, I would like to read more in May. We'll see what that translates to. Maybe I'll pick up a really long book, and who knows? Probably not. But you never know. Yeah, I watched, what was I watching? The Righteous Gemstones. I had to catch up on 3 seasons worth of that show. Now I'm fully caught up and I'm watching it in real time. It's very funny. It's great, but yeah, I think I should probably read more at night so that I sleep better. My mood breakdown of the books I did read: reflective, number 1. Always, usually, I'm reading something reflective, followed by emotional, dark, mysterious, and tense, which, yeah, makes sense, feels on brand. And also everything that I read this month was fiction. I'm gonna start with Whereabouts by Jhumpa Lahiri, written and translated by Jhumpa. Actually, she wrote this originally in Italian and then she translated it into English, which is pretty amazing. This is about a woman narrating her experiences at different places in an unnamed European city where she lives, probably in Italy, although it's not explicitly stated. You could also say it's about the different states that she moves through, and when I say states, I mean feelings, usually more feeling lost or confused or adrift. I rated this book 4 stars. It was minimal, beautiful, sad, kind of everything that I love in a book. From the back cover, this book is described as a nuanced portrait of urban solitude, and that is pretty spot on, I would say. Themes are loneliness, I'd say like unspoken grief, probably, identity, and there's some adult, child, and parent relationship stuff in here as well. Some of that going on. Plot, however, not so much. Not a lot of things happening. Things happen, but it's very much like observational. Like, it felt like a long walk through someone's mind as they go about their day and all their activities and the things they might do in any given day. The prose was so beautiful while still being so very simple. I'm gonna read one of the many passages that I underlined and marked. Context for this: she's describing a neighborhood stationery store that she used to frequent often that had closed. As disappointed as I am, I'm not surprised that my beloved stationery store no longer exists. The rents must be sky high around here, and furthermore, who buys notebooks in the end? My students can barely write by hand. They press buttons to learn about life and explore the world. Their thoughts emerge on screens and dwell inside clouds that have no substance, no shortage of space. That line about the clouds, that so beautiful, so clever, so, just amazing. I loved that. I also loved the structure. It's set up into, I don't even want to say chapters. It's more like small mini chapters. Like some of them are, just a page. Some of them are a couple pages, and they all have the names of the place that she is or she's describing, like at the trattoria, in the office, on the street. I'm just a sucker for things like that. I thought it was really well done, especially with the title of the book, and it was great. Anyways, I know that I will come back to this one for a reread. I want to read more from her. I really loved her writing style. I think a second read of this will make me love it even more. Recommendations. I would say read this if you dream of disappearing to Italy or another country and living there for like a year as a local. Also, if you get emotional by finding beauty in the mundane, you will enjoy this book. Or if you just want some of these sad thoughts about life, and I would say like about being an adult specifically. I know a lot of books are about being an adult, but yeah. If you want those thoughts that are in your head reflected back to you on the page, but written really well, I would read this book. Next book that I read in the month of April was I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman, translated by Ross Schwartz. This was a reread for me, my second time reading it. I loved this book, 5 stars, will always be 5 stars for me. This is speculative feminist fiction following an unnamed narrator, one of 39 women who are held captive underground in a prison until one day something happens and then they escape. And if you haven't heard of this book before, that premise probably sounds like very like maybe action forward and like adventurous and dangerous, but it's actually quite a slow and steady and I don't want to say subtle, but like it's just like an even, calm story. It unfolds in such like that subtle, beautiful way. Just kind of like the writing style, which is also just minimal and straightforward, which I enjoyed. I think at the heart of this story is the question of what it means to be human. When everything else is stripped away, what does that mean? But other themes in this, other than humanity, we have community, loss, search for meaning. One new thing that I picked up on more fully on this second read was the idea of knowledge and the importance of passing on knowledge, like gaining it, passing it on, even if it seems kind of futile. It seems to me that the author is saying that that is a core part of being human. And there are a few parts in the book where the narrator is trying to understand something that is kind of not useful in the world that she's currently living in, and then the other women that she's living with are keeping it a secret because they're like, you're not going to need this. But the narrator is very much like drawn to understanding that. Later in the book she's reading and she finds great joy in understanding and learning from these books, even again if the knowledge that she's taking in is not relevant to her world. I think like she's reading something about roses and there are no roses where she is. So it's just, it was very fascinating to me to pick that up on this read. I think I just felt like, yeah, the importance of passing on knowledge, and I guess you could even say of storytelling. It's a phenomenal book, and as a writer, I especially resonated with it. I think I'm gonna make this book required reading for anyone that I meet or anyone that I'm friends with, which would kind of be insane, but it would also be funny. Yeah, even if you don't like it, that's totally fine. I just think it's good and I really want to recommend it to anyone. I will always recommend this. Next book is Strange Weather in Tokyo by Hiromi Kawakami and translated by Allison Markin Powell. This was a library book. It's probably due soon, so I should return it. The author was nominated for this year the International Booker Prize, not for this book, but for another book of hers, Under the Eye of the Big Bird. So I thought I would check this one out. It came up on my library holds. It's about a woman in her late 30s who runs into her former high school teacher, I think like her literature teacher, perhaps. And they run into each other at a bar, and then throughout the story we witness the relationship that starts to form between them. This book talks a lot about loneliness. We are 3 for 3 for books about loneliness this month. It also talks about connection, unconventional friendship, and love and companionship. And I gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed it. It wasn't, my favorite book that I read this month, and that's okay. I enjoyed the characters and the setting. There were lots of descriptions of food at bars in Tokyo, which I've never been to before, and I've never eaten a lot of these foods, so that was interesting. There's a scene or two where they go foraging for mushrooms, which was really fascinating because I've also never done that. Something I would want to do. The writing was good. It was fine. Following whereabouts, that's a tough one to follow up after in terms of writing. And so this just didn't hit quite as hard for me as that. I also thought it was going to be a touch weirder than it was. And that could be because the word strange is in the title, but it also could be because the description of Under the Eye of the Big Bird, also by this author, is very weird and speculative and kind of out there. And so I wrongly assumed, of course, that this was going to be a similar type of story, like a speculative story, and it's like everyday life, I would say. There were references to Japanese literature, which I don't know a ton about, but it was interesting. There are lots of descriptions of nature. Again, the description of food was really great. Loved that. So I would still recommend this. And I followed that book up with Lapvona by Ottessa Moshfegh. Also a library book. also probably due soon. I remember when this book came out, 2022, so like almost 3 years ago, probably. Everyone was like going crazy about this book. Makes sense. Moshfegh is a wonderful writer. This is a dark medieval tale following the villagers who live in the fictional Eastern European village of Lapvona. And it's mainly following Marek, who is a 13-year-old boy living with his kind of mean shepherd father. There's also a blind village witch who's great, and a corrupt village lord, a corrupt priest. You gotta have one of those. It was pretty weird, I'll say. It was definitely weird, but like folk weird, not dystopian weird, which is usually what I read. I was drawn to this because I last month read Matrix by Lauren Groff, and so I was like, I want to read like a medieval story. Very different books, but if you're looking for a time period, yeah, you might make a similar jump. Ultimately, I had mixed feelings about this book. I think I would rate it a 3. It was definitely entertaining, and it definitely captured my attention, but I felt like it could have been better, especially because it was written by Moshfegh. Yeah, to be honest, if I didn't know that it was written by her, I probably wouldn't have guessed. There's definitely some of what I believe to be her like hallmarks in here, which are, you know, bodily functions, blood, you know, just kind of like a general gross feeling. I guess that's how you would describe that, how I would describe that. Themes, let's talk about themes. Power, wealth versus poverty, corruption of religion, capacity for human suffering, and survival. What I liked about this book, I liked the folksiness, you know, we're talking about herbs and plants and a lot of good nature descriptions. Going back to that witch, she's blind, some interesting stuff there. I liked the setting. It felt very real, this village. What I didn't like, I did like the characters, as I mentioned, but I felt like some of them were introduced like a little bit too late into the story for me to like want to care about them. I'm talking specifically about the character of Gregor, I think that's how you say that, who is an older person in the village. And yes, technically he's mentioned on the first page, but then we go like probably over half the book with staying more with Merrick. And so then when we come back to Gregor, I'm like, oh, now we're supposed to care about him again. I guess I just didn't love that structurally, but it was a fun read, and it'll definitely stick with me for a while, as everything I've read of Moshfegh does. I don't know a ton about her as a person, as an author, but I think she's one of those authors that I would want to read all of her work. Maybe after my Ferrante experiment, so we're talking like at least 6 months from now. Who knows? Who should read this? I would say fans of A24 movies should read this, and that's no shade because I am one of those people. Do you want a book that feels like historical fiction, but dark, twisted, and insane? Then you should read this book, because that's what this is. And probably also if you want a cinematic reading experience. This felt so much like a movie, and I don't know if there's a specific movie I'm thinking of. I know this kind of is like the A24 thing that I talked about, but yeah, That's all I got. And now for a book that I DNF'd this month, which was Trout Fishing in America by Richard Brautigan. I'm probably saying that wrong. This was the first book that I started reading in April, and it's very short. It's probably like it's definitely less than 200 pages, but it was just slightly too unconventional for me. I think I got halfway through and I just, yeah. It's more like a novella, technically. There are short little scenes that are loosely connected to each other through recurring characters. And how would I describe this book? I think it's like a comical critique of American culture, but important to note, written or published in 1967. It was funny in parts. I was laughing. I, wrote down some things that were funny, but I think it was just too hard to follow for me. I picked it up to challenge myself to read something outside of what I normally read. So in that regard, it was a success. And I didn't finish it. That's fine. I'd be interested to know if anyone out there has read it, what they thought about it, and should I have stuck through it? I went back and forth. It was also another library book from like an earlier pickup, and I thought about renewing it to hold on to it a little longer and come back to it, but I just, other books were calling to me. And that was my April in reading. I'm currently reading On the Calculation of Volume by Solveig Bale, which I'm loving and I'm excited to talk about on here. What are you reading? I want to know. And also, do you have any audiobooks for me? That would be cool if you have any recommendations. I hope you have a lovely week. I hope you're enjoying what you're reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!